And I remember when you came in and I said, you're right where you need to be.
Yes, that is exactly what you said.
And you kind of looked at me like, oh, I think we're going to get along.
I think this is going to work out okay. Because we understood that when we were here, you put on a face and you do what you need to do. Sure. You check it at the door, so to speak.
Absolutely.
But there was a lot going on behind the scenes as well.
Yeah. He would call me after I would do a live chat and he goes, how do you not stumble? You don't stumble. And I was like, oh, I stumble. You're just overlooking some blemishes.
Hi, I'm Leslie Lowe. Welcome to Leslie's Lowdown on Life. Hi, everybody. I have got a very special guest in the studio today. I'm super excited that he's here. I mean, if you don't know him, you should probably crawl out from that rock you've been hiding under for how many years?
Too many.
Too many. But this is my good friend, Sean Owsley, also known as my partner in crime, other half. We've been hanging out together for 17 years now here. So Sean anchored the Wake Up Show for many years. Now the main anchor, and again, my partner on the 5, 6, and 6:30. You created the 6:30. We're going to talk more about that. I mean, you just have such a long history here, as well as, places like Knoxville, Tennessee, which again, we'll get to more on that here in a second. But do you remember when we first met?
Uh-oh.
And
it starts.
You knew I was going to put you on the spot there.
She said, is there anything off limits? And I said, no, we're an open book. That's what we love to be. You just have to be yourself.
It's true.
So fire away. It is weird. I'm usually asking the questions. So
nope,
it's weird.
You have to answer the questions.
It's
now.
Leslie's world, and I'm okay with that.
So I'm going to start with this because I actually met your dad before I met you.
Right.
I met your dad because he was an instructor at the American School of Broadcast, a school that I went to. And your dad was so he was magnetic, right? Larger than life. That's a good way to describe your dad. But he was so proud of his son, Sean. And he was so proud of all he had done, all he had accomplished. And then he had to tell me about want to buy a truck. I mean, he used you as an example in school the entire time, which was so much fun because I felt like I knew you before I ever met you.
He, me and my broadcasting career would really, from its inception, was kind of the seed that was planted by watching him. I was 4 years old. He was in the overnight shift on radio. He went by the nearly famous Gary Charles on radio. And I remember when they were still together, my parents divorced when I was 5. So I remember when they were still together and my mom carrying me up like midnight, 1 a.m. to watch him work. And I think that's where that seed was planted. He was just an open book. He was a kind human and super talented, amazing folk singer. I mean, we can get into all of that. But, when your parents are like so proud of you that they embarrass you, both of my parents are that way. And I loved that before he passed away in 2003, that I had come back from Tennessee and I was reporting and doing a little anchoring here at KHQ. And, he would call me after I would do a live chat and he goes, how do you not stumble? You don't stumble. And I was like, oh, I stumble. You're just overlooking some blemishes that I'm working to get better. But he was a perfectionist. His preparation work, he used to, when he did radio, he would go down every day and buy the USA Today paper and come up with little tidbits for his show. And he spent hours prepping for his radio show the next day. And in the decade of the 80s, he was the number one DJ on KDRK for basically that whole decade. And I miss him, but he shaped who I am alongside my mom and my brothers and my family. And that legacy, that's something that can never be taken away. And I didn't expect this because I'm usually pretty stoic, but when you brought him up, I got emotional because he's been gone 22 years now. But you know what? You're carrying on a legacy of a kind human that tried to make the world better in the smallest way he could, however he could, every minute that he lived.
Yeah, it was pretty fantastic. I learned a lot from your dad. And I remember when I left the other station and I came to NonStop Local KHQ. Right. That was just the mighty Q when I got here. But I remember walking into the newsroom And I was intimidated. This is the place I'd always wanted to be. This was like the King of Kings in Spokane. And I had watched you guys and I was in awe of you guys. And of course, when I saw you, I was like, oh my gosh, that's Sean Owsley. That's, I know his dad, and his dad is so proud. And I was, intimidated, but you were so welcoming right off the bat. Do you remember that day?
You were right by the entry door over by the file cabinet when you first walked in. And I obviously knew some of your history, not like we know each other now, and I just knew it's easy to see talent when you watch it, even though we didn't know each other. That it's so easy to spot talent. And I think your magic was then, it's even more so now, is just authenticity and warmth. People want to talk to you. And I noticed
do you need me to pay you now, or do you want me to pay you later?
We're building up a big bill here.
I know. Put it on my tab.
How was that? How was the delivery?
It was really good. It was really good.
Okay.
Yeah, just put it on my tab. So you started here, and I want to take people all the way back because I love your career path because it is just full of tenacity and grit and hard work. And you earned every bit of where you are right now. But you walked in this building and you were willing to do everything. So take us from ground floor.
Ground floor, I went to Eastern, studied broadcast journalism with a radio television minor. I mean, the RTV department's not even there anymore. It became a film department. Loved my time at Eastern. I was born in Spokane in 1970. Two older brothers, Kevin and Pete. We're all 4 years apart. My oldest brother, Pete, and I have the same birthday on July 8th. I grew up in North Spokane. My parents divorced. My mom moved us to Seattle. I grew up in Seattle. Then I came back home. My dad was always here, so I was back in Spokane quite a bit visiting. And then I decided to go to Eastern, graduated from Eastern. And at that point, I just wanted a job. I wanted a foot in the door. I didn't care what the job was. I didn't care what it paid. And I interned here my senior year. I have to shout out the director of journalism at Eastern, Steve Blewett. He got me the internship. He saw something in me. He's still around, and I just appreciate those are the people that make a difference in the trajectory of your life. And so I want to recognize Steve. But got my foot in the door. My first job here was first day officially on the job was January 1, 1993. I was an overnight tape editor on Saturday and Sunday mornings, and I made $5 an hour. And I couldn't have been happier.
Tape editor. That
editor.
takes us back to the good old days.
Yeah.
Yes. Slicing and dicing.
Yes. Be kind, rewind,
So how were you able to keep moving up the ladder? What did it take?
Well, I think I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. I was the first one in my family to graduate college. And there's a makeup in me that's a little bit like, doubt me at your own peril. I will prove you wrong. And I've kind of always had that little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And I remember before I started working at KHQ, I got a job interview within the state. I won't say where, smaller market. Didn't have a coat, borrowed a coat. It was too big for me. Face was still breaking out. I was so young. Borrowed a car, drove down there, had my 10-minute video reel that I had recorded at the KHQ studios in my internship, and went in. The person was 45 minutes late to our meeting, put my reel in for 10 seconds, ejected it, and said, I'm going to be real with you. You don't have it. You will never work in this business.
That's deflating.
That was my first official interview.
How do you get past that?
But then she said, but I'll offer you an internship. And I was like, no, thank you. I even,
Yes.
You know when to pivot. You have to trust your instincts, even if you're devastated. And I was so excited. And I decided to, and this kind of tells you a little bit behind the curtain with me. Okay, all right. I walked to the station across the street without an appointment, asked to see the news director. He welcomed me in, looked at my stuff, and he goes, it's rough, but I see talent there. We don't have any job openings, but stick with me. Reach back out to me every 3 months. So when one person tells you no, there's another person around the corner that's gonna lift you up and gonna buoy you and inspire you. And he did. Then I ended up getting the job here at KHQ.
See, this is what I love. We do have so many similarities because I
Yeah.
think our career paths, although different in timing wise, like everybody told me, you can't do that. And I was like, well, watch me. So we both have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder.
Yeah. And I remember when you came in and I said, you're right where you need to be.
Yes, that is exactly what you said. Yeah.
And you kind of looked at me like, oh, I think we're going to get along.
I think this is going to be, this is going to work out okay. But you were, at that point, you were anchoring part of the wake up show or the morning show here for KHQ. But you went on from intern to tape editor to
photographer. For about almost 2 years. And then at that point, I had a broadcast journalism degree. I always knew I wanted to write. That was my passion. I eventually wanted to report or anchor news. I didn't know which, but I was open to whatever path presented itself. And I remember I went to then news director Patricia McCrae, and I just said, look, I want to wear a tie. I want to write. I want to come in. And she said, give me some writing samples. And, she took a chance on me, and it really changed the game because she gave me a dayside producing job, which usually if you don't have producing experience, you started on the weekends back in. And I think that was 94. And I was producing the 6 o'clock show out of the gate. Did I make mistakes? Absolutely. Was I green? Yes. But you're not going to outwork me. And I will learn, and I will close those loops, and I will get better. And that was my mindset. And that really kind of changed it. And then a little bit later, they asked me to come and do some sports emergency fill in. And that's when I first got in front of the camera.
Okay, so tell me about, because you were producing for some strong personalities.
Sure.
So
yes.
how did that role shape you into your on-air presence? Because I would imagine that it has to give some kind of a feed to what you're doing. I mean, because you see both roles, behind the camera and then now you're in front of the camera. How did that shape that?
I think all of it, it's kind of a recipe that all gets cooked for a while, and you come out of it with your own identity, your own voice. And I think, like you said, there were some real strong personalities that I was producing the show for. Some of them were tougher on me than others. Some of them were very, very guiding and kind. And you kind of take all of that, and then you decide, how do you want to do the job? And based on how you were treated, how do you want to treat people that are coming up and learning? And that was really important to me. And I'm not one to raise my voice. I always find if there's somebody that's learning, it's super important to me to teach. And I think I get buoyed by that, by taking somebody and saying, this didn't work. But instead of making them feel bad, you show them the process so they learn. And 9 times out of 10, if you're inspiring somebody, they'll buy in. They don't repeat those mistakes. So those that have lived it, we have to share it.
Yeah, and I think that makes it a big difference. Having been in so many different roles, you understand what it means to be in that role. So
and everybody's trying to do their
teach.
best.
Yes.
And everybody going to make mistakes. We still make mistakes.
We do?
I still make mistakes.
I still make mistakes.
That's why this works, right? Unless he's like, oh, yeah, that's my guy.
True. True. Okay, so you've been in the business now for over 30 years, which, again, you started when you were 5.
Yes.
Yes,
yeah.
you started when you were 5,
speak,
which is amazing to me. You're barely out of diapers and you're in the business. You left to Spokane. Let's talk about that for a second, because that was something I don't think I fully understood until a couple of years of working with you, that you and your family moved. You moved to Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah. So I was reporting here. I was a general assignment reporter. I was the web designer. But, we had long-term established anchors, and there wasn't room to grow. And I'm one that I always have to be growing some way, even now to this current day. How can I challenge myself? How can I be better than I was yesterday? And that's kind of always been my mindset. And it was kind of locked in here as far as the anchor stable, and I wanted to anchor. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I sent videotapes back then, VHS reel, and I looked for job openings. There was a site called TV Jobs, and they listed all the job openings, and I was willing to move anywhere. I was willing to, because I had to get some anchoring experience. Wherever somebody would take a chance on me to do that, that's where I was at that. It was kind of a crossroads for me. And I got a call from one of the kindest people ever. His name's Brian Trauring. He was a news director in Knoxville. And he said, I'd like to fly you in. And I was like, Knoxville, where is that? I'm looking at the state. I was like, whoa, that's way down in the southeast.
It's a long way from home.
Just above Georgia, and I'd never been out of Washington State. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I flew down, and the audition went well, and they had already hired the female co-anchor for the morning show there, and I was not back a few days where they made me a job offer, and it was a little scary because I was leaving my home base, my foundation. Spokane or Seattle had been my home base my entire life, and this is something that I share with the younger generation coming up, it was one of the biggest and the best growth periods of my life, because really you and your close family that you're with, that's all you have in the immediate vicinity. And it was just a great opportunity at WATE TV down there. Anchored there for almost 3 years. My son Ryan was born in Knoxville. And that's when, at that time, me and his mother decided to come back home. And we came back I didn't have a job. And I was interviewed and offered a job at a different station here. And Patricia reached out and said, please talk to me before you do anything. And I said, okay. And it was the absolute right choice, because look at the longevity and the great people that I work with. And, I don't ever take for granted what we do. It's personal for me. And it does make me a little emotional, because I'm appreciative every day of what we do. And it's not easy. And we take arrows. But if you stick to integrity, doing the absolute best you can, and class, I think it all washes out in the end.
Yeah, if this is something you have to have passion for to do. You can't just want to see your face on TV. There has to be a passion and a drive behind it to sustain it.
For sure.
Yeah, we've been through a lot together. So let's talk about that, the morning show, because you were on a very successful morning show with some of the greatest of the great.
That team is, it was, what I loved about that team, obviously George and Dave Shelley, Matt.
Yeah.
You never knew what was going to happen next.
Oh, no.
There was this spontaneity that's really hard to create in broadcasting. And it was some of the best times I've ever had in my career. And I tell you what, you never knew where George was going to go next.
That was the best part about him.
And he was the funniest person you will ever be around.
Yeah, George Maupin was one of a kind.
Yeah, we miss him. We love him.
Yeah,
he's an institution.
He is an institution.
We'd be hanging
all
out
of
at
his
the
own.
booth at the fair, and George. Everybody wanted to hug George.
Yes,
and he'd every time just hug him long enough for it to get awkward. And I'm like, George, too far.
But that's what made George.
Yeah, he was just a special talent.
So they that morning show, people moved on. They needed to reconfigure everything.
Yep.
And so then they brought me down from nights where I was with Dan and Stephanie. And they brought in Kalai Chalk. And we started a brand new morning show called...
Was that 2014? I think it was
The Wake Up Show.
I want to say 2014.
Well,
somewhere around there.
I want to say maybe. I thought we were on it for like 10 years, or I was on it for like 10 years or something like that.
Well, when you get up at 2:30 a.m., it feels like 20.
maybe 30.
Yeah. But we're only 20.
But we are only 20. 20. Don't forget that.
Right.
But we had a great run with that show. That was something we created and we did. And we had a great time. We had a lot of fun. We made some memories. But then there came a time that you decided it was time to move on.
Well, I had done, combined with Tennessee and then back in Spokane, I had done the morning shift for 20 years. Mm-hmm. 21. And the 2:30 wake up, I had a lot of people would say, oh, it must get easier. And I was like, no, it gets harder as you go. And I just, just for where I was in life, I just felt I needed to do something else. and I felt strongly about that. But it was hard. We had created something so magical and so fun, and we had a great chemistry. And so it's hard to leave something that's successful, but doesn't mean it's not right to leave something that's successful. You have to trust your instinct. I've always done that. And there was really nowhere else for me to go. And, I had a good rapport with management here, and we had some really hard conversations. And we had agreed that I was there had been some rumors that I was retiring, which was really never really the truth, but I was going to take the summer off from broadcasting, and I was at peace with that. I was like, I need to reset here and kind of fill the gas tank back up personally, and that was the plan. And I never got to the summer because
You did not.
in the middle of May, Patricia and Tracy reached out. And Neil, and they said, I had done Invest Northwest for about a decade, and it was a very successful, kind of longer form, in-depth interview show. And they said, what if we launch the 630 and we'll let you and the producer and Tracy kind of come up with the template for it?
And we should say that Neil and Patricia and Tracy are our bosses.
Yes.
So they're at the top of that triangle right there.
Well, and they just know broadcasting.
They know broadcasting.
Their instincts,
yes.
You can trust their instincts.
Yes.
And this is a business that ebbs and flows and changes, especially with the introduction of tech and smartphones and web and streaming. But their compass is usually spot on.
The other thing I want to kind of just put in here and tell me if I'm not remembering this all correctly, but it was COVID. And so we had kind of launched into a 630 to give information on COVID.
Yeah, COVID hit early on. I think the first case was over like in Snohomish County in February of 20, I believe. And I came off the morning show in May.
Yes.
And so once we launched the 630 June 1 of 2020, and we were in the middle of a pandemic. And that was important to just get information out at that time. And that was kind of the focus of the show. And it became successful. People connected to it for whatever reason.
And why do you think that is? And when you were putting this 630, because it was your baby, this is your baby, the 630. And so it's kind of your love child, your brainchild. When you came up with that format, what were you thinking? What you were going to give the viewers?
I just tried to be like detailed, direct information, give them as much information, tap experts to interview that will educate somebody if they want to learn about something. And that was kind of the whole focus of the show. And then the rest of the show was, we like to call it just a freight train of news. We're not going to waste your time. That was our motto when we launched the show. And it was really just, we have a 22-minute news window outside of the commercials, and we're just going to give you, we're going to overload you with information, and hopefully it'll stick. That was the thought process organically at the beginning of the stages.
And I'm saying you got to the point. And I don't mean that like as direct as it sounds, but I think people wanted that. They wanted that. Tell me what I need to know.
I think there were a number of things, a number of factors that were in that moment. And I just said, I want to drill back down to fundamental journalism, conversations, question and answer. My opinions do not matter. And that was kind of the premise. And we kind of just nurtured that and grew that from there. And people did. They tuned in.
I think they tuned in.
It's hard for me to say that.
No, I'll go ahead and say it for them.
Yeah.
Your show's been number one for years now, and just one of the, I think, such a well done show. And I understand why people latched onto that, because you are giving an extra. I say extra, and this is where I'm going to transition a little bit. And if you haven't gotten to know Sean in the last minutes that we've been talking, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. What drives Sean is passion, just passion, grit, integrity. If you're in, you're in. You are all in this business. And we talked a little bit about where some of that comes from. You come with that little bit of a chip on your shoulder. You come with that drive. But who were your influences? Who did you draw inspiration from? And then I want to talk about who Sean is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my influencers were my parents.
Yeah.
Both strong personalities. My dad was in broadcasting. My mom was born in Germany. English is her second language. She moved to Spokane when she was 26, did not know English, but she is a fiery,
Wait, your mom is?
bright personality. And just
She's amazing.
there is a foundation and a determination in her that is second to none. And I am a mama's boy. I love my mama. And I was the youngest of three boys too. And so, and my older brothers, and my oldest brother, Pete, he worked for Boeing for years, just brilliant, smart, but so different than I am. He's an introvert. I'm not necessarily an introvert. And so those were kind of the personal influences that were kind of formed who I was when I was really young, and I was observing and absorbing at that time. So I would say, close family at that point.
Depth comes from life experience.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of depth.
Yeah. Well,
And that's where we connect.
yeah.
Because we've been through the fire in different levels in our personal lives. And I think that that's how we've been able to support each other, because we understood that when we were here, you put on a face and you do what you need to do.
Sure.
You check it at the door, so to speak.
Absolutely.
But there was a lot going on behind the scenes as well.
Yeah. Well, if you've had adverse times, it's like, why is this happening to me? Or
Yeah.
what is this? And we've been there for each other in tough times. And luckily we have other people around us that have as well. But when you get out on the other side of it, you do realize that you grew as an individual, and it creates layers and it creates depth. And it also is like a big exclamation point on you getting out of your own bubble. And I think that was the biggest takeaway for me. I appreciate each day. I appreciate the gifts I have in my life so much deeper than I did before adverse things happened in my life. My son's mom, Ryan's mom, passed away. And I'm remarried to Sarah, who I've known since 1984. We were always friends. There was no, dating or anything. There was a deep respect, and we kind of always stayed in touch. And without her, I mean, that was just a hard thing on my son. And luckily, Sarah has 4 kids. And so Ryan has 4 siblings now, and they're all thriving. And at the end of the day, when you take stock in what you're doing in life and what it means to you, and you look at your kids and they're thriving, and more importantly, they're good human beings, and they're outside of themselves, and they help others. To me, that is the true foundation and common denominator that we should all strive for.
Well, we were working together when everything happened with Katie, with Ryan's mom.
Yep.
And it can drive you in 2 different directions, right? Because it can make you a little bit like edgy. I know this just from my own experiences. It can create an edge, but it also creates this extreme softness, because all of a sudden you're understanding things that you didn't want to really be a part of understanding, right? There comes new depth with that. But you're also like realizing that what's most important.
The things that frustrated you before no longer frustrate you.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, life presents you challenges. It is what you make it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my mindset. And Sarah is just a rock star, and just as grounded and supportive as you'll ever find. And the kids, and
Let's talk about Sarah.
Clayton and Mitchell and Isabella and Maria and Ryan. That's my family. And I do think I ended up where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I'm still very good friends with Ryan's mom's family, and we stay in touch, and there's a respect. And, you can go through tough things in life, but they don't have to define you. They can help you become a better person. And I would say that's the best way I can describe it. And I just appreciate things so much deeper. I always was appreciative, but it's just a completely different level. And you've had really tough life experiences as well.
Yeah.
And but I love that I get to come to work with you every day. And that's what makes the team. What you see on the air, you can see good broadcasters, whatever, but there's a authentic and genuine friendship here, good and bad. We spar, we laugh. I mean, it runs the entire, but that's when you're that way, it's authentic. It's real.
I would definitely say our relationship is incredibly real.
Leslie tells me what to do.
No,
that's what I do.
Nope. Oh no, definitely not. No, I think that we've been through the highs and the lows, so to speak. Like we've moved on in life, together. With you and Sarah. I love Sarah. She
loves you a little bit too.
Yeah, I do love her lots. I remember when I first met her, I was like, yes, that is like the perfect match for you. And I think that you guys support each other just so well in life in general.
We were laughing the other day because we were talking. We're like, we're both kind of dominant personalities, but it works.
But it does work.
And as my mom says, she's great for you, but you're great for her too.
Yes.
That's
what we call win-win situation.
It's a win-win. Yep.
Yeah.
So
okay,
lucky.
Yeah, I think you both are very lucky, and I love seeing you so happy.
And I appreciate that, Leslie. But like you've seen the darkest days behind the scenes, and you don't see that on the news. But and I had only known you a couple years, but I've mentioned it a couple times, but I usually don't. If you watch us on news, I rarely talk about myself purposefully. It's that get out of your own bubble thing. And, my brother committed suicide in 2010, overdosed on pills, and he had struggled for a long time. And when things like that happen, it resets you in such a deep way that if you're not listening, you're losing. You know what I'm saying? And every time there's been one of those instances in my life, I stop and I reflect and I chew on it and I work through it and I process it. And I'm not afraid to, and I went to counseling and I'm not afraid of that. I think that is, you have to really dig in and confront the things that are hurdles in your life to overcome what has happened to you.
Those are two huge, enormous losses to go through in one lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two very personal losses to
hard.
Go through. It is hard. Really hard. It also connects you to people. And that's why I think you connect to people, because you're not just reading a story, you're connecting and you're telling that story and you understand it. And I think when you're looking at that camera, it's like you're looking at anybody who's going through that and saying, I got you.
Well, I think in this role, and we're lucky to do what we do. We are, especially with the longevity, and and we stand on the shoulders of people that came before us, and Dan and Stephanie, and what a legacy there. And if you don't respect that, then what are you doing? And so I take it super serious. It's a huge responsibility, but I always try it. If somebody messages me, I try to respond. With social media, it can be hard, but like if somebody sends me a thoughtful message, even if they're critical of what we're doing, if they're not just flamethrowering you, if it's a critical message, but it's thought out, I'm like, yeah. And I'll write them back. And I said, you know what? I see your point. Let's talk this through. And I think that's important. You can't just think you're doing a great job into nowhere and let it fall into the abyss. You have to have those barometers and check and balances to make sure you're staying true to the idea of the job when you first took it.
Yeah, you brought up social media, so I'm going to go there.
Yeah, go ahead. Wait, we live that
I'm gonna go
too,
there.
right? Everybody's lived that. Anybody listening has lived that.
Yeah, and I will say that was kind of a game changer, I think, because we also went through that transition of social media. in our careers together, because that was non-existent when we were starting out, and now is just such a prevalent thing in what we do on a daily basis.
It really is.
And talking about people reaching out to you, and that can be overwhelming and great and difficult all at the same time. And I say overwhelming because it can be a lot. I say great because people can be amazing. And we really do want to hear your feedback. We do. And we will look at it objectively. And we will, if there is something legitimate that we want to change or need to listen to, we will do it. But then there's the hurtful stuff that comes in. And to me, I'm just like, oh, that's killed me at times.
Yeah. Well, we've spent many hours talking about this and things that have been said to you or things that have been said to me.
Yeah.
And it's you, it ebbs and flows based on your daily mood and how you're going to absorb what somebody says and how you're going to interpret it. And I tell you, for a long time, for me, I mean, those hateful comments would slow me way down. They wouldn't stop me in my tracks, but they would slow me way down.
They find a place in your head.
They do. And it's like, you're just out here giving everything you have to try and do a good job and try and, bring some kindness and light in the world. And, there are those that'll just take you out any way they can. And I've gotten better at it. I'm not saying, there are days it still gets me. I mean, I'm just going to be real and authentic but then you realize, would they say that to your face? I don't think they would say that to your face. And if they said it to your face, the response you're going to give is going to be a lot stronger than again on a keyboard.
It's true. I've learned the art of block. I think you have too, because I am super sensitive. So
it takes a lot for me to block somebody because I always try to look at a different perspective. But there definitely is that breaking point where we're done.
Yes. And you don't need to be subject to that. I call it abuse. It's online abuse. It can be and again,
there's no doubt.
Bullying.
It crescendos into abuse.
Yes. Yeah. But I live by now, and I know you know this. It's like the players aren't going to criticize because they're on the field. They're playing the game. They know how hard it is.
Yeah.
It is the people in the cheap seats that are going to criticize. Why? Well, the seats are cheap. They're free. They have no clue. They're just sitting up at 30,000 feet looking down, criticizing because they have no clue what it takes to do whatever they're criticizing.
I couldn't agree stronger. And I'm going to say this. I think if I was just to put a percentage on it right now, I would say 85% of the people that respond to us on social media are fantastic.
Amazing.
And that doesn't mean they're building us or telling us how great they are, but there's a real dialogue about news content or weather or community events that we're part of. And appreciate you guys being part of Bloomsday or Hoop Fest or the Lilac Parade, which we're doing here this year. And 15, maybe even 10% are the ones that, for whatever reason, it builds them up to take somebody else down.
Yeah, and you have to think about that.
And you try to maintain that perspective. I think some of the social media platforms are a little kinder than the others, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's probably good. Yeah. That's good. That's
what else
good.
you got for me? I'm not used to being interviewed. I'm used to doing the interviewing.
This is so fun.
It is fun, and thanks for having me on. And can I just say, super proud of what you're doing here.
Thank you.
Your workload is massive right now. And I texted you that on Saturday, and I said, I see you.
Thank you. And I do appreciate that because you do see what it takes to do all of this. And I want to say thank you to you for the years of just being my friend, being an incredible coworker. You've taught me a lot over the years. And you've also been there for me in some of my darkest days where I wonder, do I want to keep doing this? And you've always been a cheerleader. So thank you for that. And thank you for what you do for the integrity of news every single day.
Thanks, my friend.
Because I don't think it's an easy place to sit these days.
It's not.
Yeah.
But it's important.
But it's important.
And I'm as passionate as I've ever been. And I've always said, if I start to feel that passion waning, it might be time to pivot out. But I'm not there. In fact, I'm more passionate than I've ever been. And thanks to you for being a friend. And we have a good relationship because here's the foundation of it, which we don't talk about on TV.
Go.
But I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear.
Oh, no, that's
I'm going to
for
tell
sure.
you the truth, and sometimes it's like a velvet hammer. But you do the same for me.
That's true. I think
Is
is one
that
thing.
correct?
Yeah, I think that's very correct. And it took me a little bit longer to get to that place, but I think that we have that relationship now. And it's not, we've been through a lot.
Yeah,
right?
a lot.
I would say that we are very much like brother and sister. Where sometimes I walk away, I'm like, kind regards, like,
and then I just put my head down.
and then you put your head down, or vice versa. But we've had our moments where we've disagreed, we've butted heads. That's just normal, though, because we work so closely together, and we both have a huge passion.
Wouldn't you
for
rather
what
have
we
it
do.
that way than tiptoeing around
No.
emotions and stuff?
Yeah, no.
I mean, seriously.
No,
Like if somebody's super direct with me, at least you know where you stand. I can
Yeah.
work with that all day, every day.
yeah.
It's the ones that don't say the direct things to you, and we just are not that way. It's a very, very candid relationship. There are times where like we get going,
It
but
gets
we're
hot.
both fiery personalities. But look at, I'm not successful because of me. I'm successful because our team, the legacy, like I said, of the anchors before us, the reporters before us, the producers that worked with me when I was producing, the kind people that I work with, like you, and the younger generation. We have some really talented people, and I've always said, it's funny when they come in the door and they've watched us for years, and they kind of like
Tiptoe.
like, should I go talk to
Yeah,
them?
yeah.
And then they're like, oh my gosh, you're cool, And I said, look, and I always say the same thing: if you want to learn and you want to absorb, I will go out of my way to help you. If you come in entitled, I don't have any time for that. And I'm very direct that way. And so many of them want to just learn. And I said, I will help you get to where you want to get to with whatever knowledge I can give you that I've picked up from other people along the way. But there were people that always went way outside of their comfort zone to help me. And I think you have to double down and return that favor to the younger generations that are coming up.
Yeah, I think that makes a big difference. And if they can learn by example, which we try to be an example, then they carry on what we've learned.
Right.
So I call it legacy.
Yeah.
Legacy for sure. All right. Well, we have newscasts that we have to go do.
Yeah.
So, I think we should leave it at go big or go home.
Yeah.
So cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers. And I just want to say thanks for having me on, and thanks to all of you for supporting Leslie's podcast. This is the company pitch part where they told me I had to do that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, right?
I'm paying you
Leslie's
under the
Lowedown
table
on life.
right here.
No, but seriously, and I want to end with, I appreciate you. Good times,
you.
bad. We're here. We do care about each other. You care about my family. I care about your family. And we care about you. You do feel like family. Many of you say that to us. I don't know if that's because we're good at our job or we've just been around a while.
Been
right?
around for a minute,
But
right?
not bad for
But
a
we
kid that used to run the
appreciate that.
streets in North Spokane with
Yeah.
his brothers and go to Northtown when it was still an outdoor mall. And, we have ties to this community, and that matters. And I thank you for just being a friend along the way.
Well, I thank you for being a friend along the way as well. I appreciate you and all that you bring. And I appreciate you for taking the time out of your day today, because it's a busy day as well. You put in a lot down there to hang out with me up here.
Yeah, I've loved it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody, go make the rest of your days the best of your days. You know we're going to. So we'll see you tonight.